Hi, and welcome back to my Spiritual Awakening, part 2 of my video blog series. I call it my Spiritual Awakening because it's about my personal journey. I hope that you get a lot of value out of this. I'm going to be talking about the 5 or 6 big aha moments in my life. So anyway, I hope you like this, so let's get right into it. Okay, so the first big aha moment or higher consciousness awakening moment that I had early on in my life was when I was about 17 years old. And I briefly touched on this in my last video. I told you that I had been in a youth center. My life kind of spiraled completely out of control when I was around 17 years old, and I ended up in a youth center. And the first 2 months of that experience, I was still in a cloud. I had been doing a lot of drugs and partying and things like that, and I only really started to, I guess my big aha moment came when I had actually gained a bit of clarity because, the drugs had left my system and the alcohol and the cigarettes and all that, and I was eating healthier, I was sleeping regularly and getting a lot of rest. And my mind was becoming more and more clear, and I kind of just woke up one day and I was I realized that, if you don't know what a youth center is, basically it is a jail for youth that are under 18 years old, and it's really a pretty comfortable place with doors that lock, but you wake up in a very small room that is made out of cement with a very thin mattress and very few possessions of any type, which actually helped me quite a bit to realize that, to have everything taken away was actually really, really beneficial. But I woke up one morning, and it was about 2 months into that experience where I just had this big, aha moment. And I'll actually tell you one other thing about that. The night prior, this might sound a little crazy, but the night prior, this isn't the best place. There's a lot of kids in there, or it was at the time, and for many, many different reasons. And the night prior, there was a new kid that had been brought into the cell right beside mine. And I remember in the middle of the night, all the lights went on, the alarms went off, and they were basically hauling his body out of the room, and he had attempted suicide. And I don't think that he was successful in that moment, but it was a very shocking time, and this type of thing would happen from time to time in a place like that. It wasn't like a regular weekly occurrence, but it would happen. And that was pretty impactful for me, but it was the middle of the night and that happened, and then, a couple hours later, and somehow you find a way to fall back asleep. And I just remember the next day just kind of laying in my cell and in my room and just laying there and just having this deep realization, or this deep sense of realization, that I was the one who was responsible for creating the life that I had, and creating the environment around me that I had found myself in. And I just had this big wake up moment of whew, this is what I have created around me, and I'm not in a really good place. And I just really had that awakening moment. And I also realized in that moment that I had to make a decision to either turn my life around and really, listen to my higher self and make, choices that would improve my life, and go follow the path that I knew was right deep down, or I could end up like the kid in the cell beside me who had gone so low that maybe there was no return. And so that was a really big aha moment, as you can imagine. And this is the first time I've ever really shared that with anyone, especially on camera. So that was a big aha moment. And from that moment, which is really crazy was that I started to realize synchronicities, things that just, happened. And it's really funny because within a week or two after that, I was introduced to a book when I was in the youth center. It was called The Celestine Prophecy. And I highly recommend that book to anyone at all who might be starting to realize synchronicities, or I'll just say for myself, it was a really big book, but it wasn't really like, at least at the time, I didn't even see it as spiritual. I mean, I made some notes on what it was about, and I'll just read it to you a little bit. It was basically an adventure. The Celestine Prophecy, it's an adventure novel. It was made in 1993 by a guy named James Redfield. And it discusses the various psychological and spiritual ideas that are rooted in multiple ancient Eastern traditions and also in New Age spirituality. But I honestly did not even really know that at the time I was reading it. I actually just thought it was a really cool adventure book. And basically it's a story about this guy who, after losing his job as a teacher, his life kind of falls apart. He doesn't know what to do. He starts seeing these synchronicities, and it's really interesting that I found this book at the time when I also had that kind of aha awakening moment, like I have to do something, and then wow, this book just like shows up. And I'll tell you, there wasn't a lot of books in the youth center. It was very, you were lucky to have a few books to read. It was pretty amazing that this somehow found its way to me. And the whole book is really about fate, which kind of seemed to bring him on taking a trip to Peru, where he basically goes through a search for the missing scroll, and it's about all of these scrolls that describe the various insights that humanity is going through on the evolution to becoming an awakened planet. And it's a really, really cool story. But what I really enjoyed about it is that it got me thinking about synchronicities and just being more aware of how everything is connected to everything, and each action has a reaction. And I guess it was, looking back, I can see now how it's very related to karma, but it was just a really, really good book for me to read at the time. And I think that it helped me have something to hold on to as I needed to remain positive and become very, very, very disciplined. As you can imagine, being in a youth center and realizing that I needed to take control of my life, I was also surrounded by a whole bunch of other guys around my age that did not want to take control of their life at all. Like, the majority of people that were in that situation never, ever, ever came out of that situation. And I know that many of them went on to, further lives of crime and never improved. And it was a very small percentage of anyone there that would ever turn their life around and go in a different direction. So it was really great to find something to hold on to, and that really helped me in that moment. So that was definitely hands down my first kind of spiritual awakening, but at the time I just saw it as kind of like a consciousness awakening, where I realized I needed to start listening to my higher self, and making better decisions, and kind of stepping back a bit from life to kind of be the observer. And that was definitely my first spiritual awakening. Before I get into my second one, what I'll say is that did work for a long time for me, and it kept me really, really focused, really positive minded. A lot of really good things happened in my life, like circumstances would just work out for me where I was able to find a good home to go to afterwards. And just, if I were to get into the details, it's just completely unbelievable that all of these good things started happening to me since that moment. And it was just a big pivotal moment. But I'll also say that over time, without really being focused on the cause, I'd actually totally forgotten about that book and about what it helped me to realize. and I just kind of coasted off of that new mindset. And over time, it actually slowly, I slowly kind of fell away from that and slowly started, I can see it now, falling into some bad habits from time to time. And I had nothing really that I was rooted in that I could remember. I can see that now looking back. So I just thought I'd share that with you as well. So that's number one.